Okay, so we've now covered Presidents Washington and Adams, so they were the first two presidents. Now we're going to cover the third president, Thomas Jefferson. Okay, so if you look at the map, this is the map of the election results from 1792. So it shows you how many people voted for Washington. Everybody, 100%. 1796 was Adams versus Jefferson. Adams won by a narrow margin. Election of 1800, Jefferson ended up winning. He was a Democratic Republican. Adams was a Federalist. So he won the election of 1880 versus John Adams. And the importance of this was that it was the first time power was peacefully transferred from one party to another. President Jefferson was elected the third president, and he kept some Federalist policies. So he kept the national bank, he kept the debt repayment plan, and he kept the neutral foreign policy. So those were all very, very important things for this time period because the national bank was how we were covering money and debt, and the debt repayment plan we still were paying back for what we spent during the Revolution. And neutral foreign policy, we were just staying out of everybody else's business. So new Jeffersonian policies was to reduce the size of the federal government, because remember, he's Democratic Republican, so he's pro states' rights. So reduce the size of the federal government, and then also balance the budget, reduce the size of the Army and Navy. If we're being neutral, why do we need a large Army or Navy? And then he also repealed Hamilton's excise taxes and the Alien and Sedition Acts. So getting rid of those was a huge plus for his campaign because people were angry at Adams for those taxes and acts. The Louisiana Purchase. So Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Territory from the French, Napoleon. Jefferson and Congress authorized the Lewis and Clark expedition to explore the new territories west of the Mississippi River. Sacagawea was an American Indian woman who served as their guide and their translator on their journey west. So it was the most popular and the most influential achievement of the Jefferson administration. It opened up new land and it stimulated the continental expansion that would then define the first half of the 19th century in America. You may have heard of Manifest Destiny before. That is the image you think of is expanding west to the Pacific Ocean. The major significance of it, it doubled the size of the United States overnight. So that's a big, big deal. We went from 13 colonies to boom, here's the Louisiana Purchase. Jefferson had his doubts about the constitutionality of the purchase. He was a very strict constitutionalist, which means he followed exactly what the Constitution said. Now, there was nothing really written in the Constitution about buying new territory. So he was kind of hoping that it was constitutional in order to purchase it. And he was like, we'll figure it out later. Here's the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, so the Judiciary Act of 1789 created the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. It is composed of a Chief Justice, and now there are currently 8 associate justices, so there are 9 total. Originally, it was a Chief Justice plus 5 associate justices. The Supreme Court helped establish a federal circuit court and district court system, and you can see the diagram there of what makes up what in order to lead to the Supreme Court. So you don't go immediately to the Supreme Court for something, you build up to it, and you have to go through each of the different types of court districts in order to make it all the way to the Supreme Court. So the Judiciary Act of 1801 allowed Adams to pack the court with Federalists before he left office, and it was known as the Midnight Judges. So he wanted to get people on the court that were more aligned with his viewpoints politically and would make decisions based on those viewpoints of the Constitution and what was going on. He didn't want Jefferson to get on there, put Democratic Republican justices on, and it become a huge problem for the Federalists. One of those midnight judges was John Marshall from Virginia, who ended up being appointed Chief Justice and then would serve from 1801 to 1835. He is one of the most important Chief Justices you'll ever need to know. He was a Federalist, so just like Adams, and the decisions during his tenure served to strengthen the power of the Supreme Court and the federal government at the time. So that was a really big deal. The first key decision that we're going to talk about is Marbury versus Madison. This was decided in 1803. Within this decision, John Marshall established the power of the federal courts to declare laws unconstitutional. This is now known as judicial review. So the judicial branch is now able to look at any decisions by the Constitution or by the Congress or by the President and decide whether or not they think it's constitutional. The next key decision we're going to talk about is McCulloch versus Maryland from 1819. This one stated that the government has implied powers. Therefore, national laws are more important than state laws. The state laws can never overrule the national laws. The national law is always supreme. So federal is always the highest or most supreme. State comes next. The next one is Gibbons versus Ogden, which was 1823. The Supreme Court said that the Federal Commerce Clause outranked the state laws on commerce. Again, it was saying that the federal law is the supreme law. And it also took a broad national view of economic affairs. And we'll talk more specifically on each of these court decisions in class. So basically, the importance of these court cases was it expanded the power of the federal courts. So they are the foundation blocks for the court's authority to mediate the disagreements between the 3 branches of government, which was Marbury versus Madison, the different levels of government in McCulloch versus Maryland, and competing business interests in Gibbons versus Ogden. Cotton gin. So Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin in 1793, which led to the slavery-based cotton kingdom in the Deep South. It didn't have a requirement for less slaves. In fact, you could now have more slaves to do more work because it was a lot quicker with the cotton gin than it was doing it by hand to pick the seeds out. So this shows you the Cotton Kingdom in about 1850 in the South, and how important cotton was to the Southern economy. Drama going on in the United States at this time. Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton decided to get into a duel, and that was in 1804. Burr was still vice president, although Jefferson had chosen a new running mate for that following presidential election. And Hamilton played a really decisive role in Burr's defeat in the 1804 race for governor of New York. So it's all about politics. In the duel that resulted, Hamilton ended up getting killed. But on a plus side, it ended Burr's political career. Just drama going on at the time. And then foreign policy and the American economy. The first Marbury War was fought from 1801 to 1805. It was the United States shipping and navy versus the Barbary pirates. They kept stealing our goods as we were trying to cross the Atlantic. In 1807, we had an embargo, which suspended all trade with Britain, and that ultimately hurt New England manufacturers and Western farmers who were doing a lot of trading with Great Britain. And the embargo was largely due to the fact that Britain wouldn't leave the land that they said they would leave when the Revolutionary War ended. So we're going to go ahead and pick this up next time, but this is Jefferson's presidency in a nutshell.